DC's League of Super Pets is directed by Jared Stern and stars Dwayne Johnson, Kevin Hart, and Kate McKinnon. When Superman and the rest of the Justice League are captured, Crypto the Superdog must team up with a group of superpowered shelter pets in order to save his best friend. To say that I was not looking forward to seeing this movie was an understatement. Not only did I think that all of the trailers were so cringeworthy and looked so cheap, but even the posters themselves had me sighing like, I can't believe this is actually a thing. In my mind, going into the theater, there was no way that this movie was going to be any good. And to my absolute and utter shock, not only was it not bad, but I would go as far as to say it's actually pretty clever. Nothing amazing, but at the bare minimum, really friggin' decent. And I say that because despite what the trailers and the posters had me believe, a good majority of the writing in this film is surprisingly good. Like a good 3/4 of the jokes in this movie were not only chuckle-worthy, but on occasion actually got me to laugh out loud. And I would say that, for me at least, the best jokes in this movie were jokes that involved the characters or DC in some way, shape, or form. Especially with Keanu Reeves as Batman, which pretty much every single time this character opened his mouth was a gigantic laugh. The villain of this movie has an army of super-powered guinea pigs, and pretty much any single thing that these characters said actually really got me laughing. And there are some great tidbits about the multiverse of DC, and if you look in the background of some shots, there are some actually really good Easter eggs. Not to mention that at the very end of this movie, well, not the very end, the third act of this film, there is a little kitten character that pretty much throughout her entire scene, I was just laughing so hard. And along with the majority of really decent and surprisingly clever jokes, the animation is very colorful and very smooth and flowing, and little kids could just watch the movie and just be in awe of the colorful flowing imagery, but even the parents who go to see this movie will actually get a laugh at just how clever this movie can surprisingly be at times. And I say that the majority of the jokes in this movie are decent because when I talk about the lesser jokes in the film, it will sound like there are more bad stuff than good, but in actuality, I'm just magnifying the bad jokes because the good jokes overall are just, as they are, really good jokes. But with that said, the bad stuff. And I think I can first start off by saying the jokes that don't necessarily work, because as I said before, 3/4 of the jokes in this movie really do work. But then you have that 1/4, and while the jokes that worked are more character-based and poke fun at more DC stuff, the 25% of jokes that don't work in this film are pretty much the average zingers that you would find in basically any single kid's animated movie. The jokes that aren't really funny, aren't that memorable, and you pretty much just forget them, and they're pretty dated, like, as soon as you leave the theater. Superman and Batman are funny in the movie, but the rest of the Justice League in the film are not only really underpowered in this movie, but the rest of them pretty much have no real funny lines. However, I will give credit where credit is due. Jessica Cruz is getting more and more attention as the newest Green Lantern, which, just as a character, good for her. And although when you get down to the super pets of this movie, like a good half of their jokes are legitimately funny, the other half aren't really groan-worthy. They're just sort of, you made a joke, I didn't laugh, I didn't cringe, just move on. And thankfully they do move on rather quickly to some actually funny jokes. And this is where the more subjective viewpoint of comedy comes in, because if you look at most people's reviews for this movie, they will say that one of the funniest parts of this movie is Kate McKinnon as Lulu, the villain of the movie. But in my opinion, I didn't really find her all that funny. I more found her henchman funny. She just does the usual Kate McKinnon shtick that she usually does in pretty much anything that she's in, whether it's Ghostbusters or SNL, whereas the hamster henchman, Actually, no, I shouldn't say that because they make a point of it in the movie. The guinea pig henchmen in the movie actually do have funny lines pumping out left and right. And on top of that, some of the pacing is a bit off. Like, at first, throughout the first 2/3 of this movie, I thought that it was a little bit rushed. And then by the time we got to the third act, I felt it was going on for too long, oddly enough. And although this isn't really necessarily a problem with the movie, unlike other surprisingly good animated kids movies like the Lego Movie for one, I wouldn't call this movie a game changer, just something that's fun, clever, and occasionally really funny. I had such low expectations for this movie, but coming out of it after seeing it, and even talking about it right now, I'm starting to think that I like it more than even when I pressed record on this thing. There are a handful of jokes that don't really work, and some of the pacing and structure of the film is pretty wonky, but if I'm being completely honest, those are my only significant flaws with the movie. The animation is smooth and colorful, and a good 75% of the jokes that mainly involve the characters, the DC universe, or darker subject matter range from chuckle-worthy to legitimate laugh-out-loud moments. Kids will no doubt love it, parents may even enjoy it, and as for a DC fan like myself, you might actually find yourself being really surprised by something that's not necessarily amazing, but something that is intrinsically harmless and even funny at times. I'm going to give DC The League of Super Pets a C+. Well guys, thank you so much for watching, and let me know in the comments down below, did you see that end credits scene? And if you did, how funny was it? Because in my opinion, I thought that was one of the funniest moments in the entire movie. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are the best, and don't forget to click subscribe and click the bell icon down below to stay up to date on all things movie, all things TV, all things nerd.